It's our brain alerting us that there is something unsafe in the environment and we've got to do something about it. And when there is a real threat in the environment and we do something about it, then, well, great. Like we just saved our lives potentially, like you're in the caveman, scenario. And what happens now with the more clinical anxiety is our brain is going into like what's called false alarm mode, where the part of our brain that alerts us to anxiety is saying, alert, alert, there's anxiety, there's danger, but there is no danger. But we still go into that anxiety response and we still feel really threatened and afraid. And that can really limit our lives and make it smaller and smaller. If, let's say, the anxiety is coming up about driving a car or flying on an airplane or engaging in social situations, so
Hmm.
that's a false alarm because there's no actual real threat, at least not in the way that our anxiety is telling or our brain is telling us that there is.
Because I used to just go on autopilot. I'd be sitting there and I'd be having a conversation with somebody, and in my head, I'm thinking, "Oh, I had a breakup," or it was the end of the world, and I could actually almost feel like I was on autopilot while I was ruminating and obtrusive
Mhm,
thoughts and all these sort of things.
mhm,
Then people started suggesting box breathing. People suggested
mhm,
you use like you make it a movie in your head, but you take the color out,
mhm,
you make it smaller,
mhm,
you give it
mhm,
cartoon voices.
mhm,
Are there psychological tools that you would suggest if we were to make like a psychological toolbox for people? And what
mhm,
self care routines, what kind of methods would you give people as a sort
mhm.
of these will help no matter what the situation?
I mean, gosh, that's another broad question. I think that,
I
as
give
I
a
always
lot of them.
go with, I know, no, they're so good, and I hope that this really helps a broad range of people who are listening.
Hmm.
And with the work that I do, I get really specific because I work, individually, one on one. So this is what this form of anxiety, because anxiety is a big umbrella word for lots of different ways that it can manifest. So there's lots of different tools. But that said, I mean, I think you just listed a lot of really helpful tools. So, there's working with our thoughts. So if we're noticing that we're feeling anxious, or upset, saying, hold on a second, like, what was I just thinking that's making me feel this way? And getting in touch with the thoughts and asking ourselves, is that true? Or is there
Hmm.
another way of thinking about this? Or is there a pattern to this thinking, so that I can identify it? And then just by identifying the patterns of our thinkings, we can disengage from them because we recognize, oh, this is like my brain doing that thing again. So, I think that no matter what we're talking about, even if it's not clinical things necessarily, getting in touch with our thinking is a phenomenal tool because our brains are so super, super busy, constantly producing millions and billions of thoughts. There's going to be some wonky ones, so like when we catch them and we're like, oh, that's a wonky one. And actually that's a wonky one that's related to those other ones that like I've just had, and they keep on coming up. So, getting familiar with their thought patterns can be so helpful. But you mentioned like a lot of things just now, self-care also is a great way just to, so there's treating stuff when they come up, treating anxiety when it comes up, but there's also prevention. So what can we do to put our best foot forward
Hmm.
so that we could hopefully keep ourselves healthy and well? And that's where like the idea of self-care comes from. And self-care, people have this idea about self-care that it's just like pampering stuff. If I have time to do, then I'll do it. But really, like, I think a good way of thinking about self-care is the things that we can do to alleviate our stress.